All right, Indiana defeats Washington 78-62 Saturday evening at Alaska Airlines Arena in Seattle. I'm Jack Ankony with our Indiana Hoosiers on SI postgame reaction video from Seattle. Made the trip out here yesterday, and I'll be at Oregon on Tuesday for that game. And really an important road trip for Indiana going into this one. I think Indiana was listed as one of the last four teams in the NCAA tournament on Joe Lunardi's bracketology. So it really needed to win at least one of these games on the West Coast. And, this one doesn't do a ton to boost Indiana's resume. Washington was last in the Big Ten. They're below 500. So, it's only a quad two win. So it doesn't boost it in Indiana's resume a ton in that respect, but it certainly would have been very detrimental if had Indiana lost this game. It would have been its first quad two loss of the season. So more of a loss that it needed to avoid rather than a huge win in terms of putting this one on your resume and saying, hey, put us in the tournament. But Indiana certainly improves its chances to make the tournament with this win. So this one was a big Malik Reneau game for Indiana. He had 22 points, 10 for 13 shooting, and he didn't play Wednesday against Penn State. Apparently, he had some sort of allergic reaction just before the game. He participated in shoot around and was preparing to play in that game, and sort of had to be a late scratch. So Indiana brought him off the bench today. And started Umar Ballo, and that's really kind of continuing a trend that Mike Woodson recently has pretty much been staggering Ballo and Renew's minutes. They really haven't played much together in the last few games, and today it was really only for a few minutes there late in the second half. One other note on Renew's injury, Mike Woodson said they even considered flying Reneau out here separately, but then Larry Rink decided that wouldn't be necessary, so he flew with the team, but just kind of speaks to the situation that they were handling and makes it sort of even more impressive that Reneau was able to come out here and play so well today. This is sort of the vintage Malik Reneau that we've seen at times that this year maybe wasn't as often because of that injury that he had midseason that sort of, derailed his season a little bit in terms of missed, I think, 5 games or so. And the first game back wasn't really back to his normal self, but this is about as good as you'll see Malik Reneau play, which I thought was especially impressive because going into the game, he had a tough matchup against Washington's big man, Great Osabor, and Frank Kepnang, a big front line. And whether it was Reneau or Ballo, I think Mike Woodson also credited Goody for his double teams. They really held Osabor in check in this one. He only had 4 points, and all of that came at the free throw line. He went 0 for 5 from the field. This is a guy who was the Mountain West Conference Player of the Year last year, has been Washington's leading scorer this year, was one of the, bigger names in the portal this offseason, but chose to follow Danny Sprinkle here to Washington. And Indiana held him in check. I think this one, if you want to call it, the most convincing win, most dominant win, most comfortable win, pick your adjective. But I think a lot of those work for this one. Washington only led this game for 47 seconds. Indiana jumped out to a pretty big lead, 15-5 after it was kind of back and forth for the first 2 minutes of the game. But, Indiana led by, I think, as many as 14 in the first half, maybe 15, it looks like. And Washington made a little bit of a run there at the start of the second half. They went on a 8-0 run to start, 7-0 run to start the second half, cut it to a 44-37 game. But then Indiana immediately responded with a 7-0 run, push it back to a 14-point lead. And, Washington got it to about 10 or 11 there in the second half again, but never really threatened to come back in this one, I think, which just kind of speaks to, Indiana really hasn't done that a whole lot in these games, except for maybe a few of the non-conference matchups. So to do that against a Big Ten opponent on the road, I know Washington is in last place and they're below 500, but I still think that Indiana deserves credit for taking care of business, coming out here on a long road trip, and really dominating. Kind of to highlight some other players, Luke Goody had 18 points in this one, went 5 for 9 from 3. Thought he played really well, sort of spacing the floor for Indiana. Mackenzie Mbako, 10 points, made a couple threes. Trey Galloway had 8 points, not very efficient for him, 4 for 12 and 0 for 5 from three, but he had 7 assists. The 2 games before this, he had 9 assists in 2 straight games. So he's sort of turned into, not turned into, but because Indiana sort of put him in that role last year when Xavier Johnson got hurt, but he's really excelling kind of in that initiator type of role for Indiana, getting him into the offense, running that pick and roll with one of the bigs, and finding open guys. Indiana shot 49% from the field in this one, 9 for 23 from three is 39%. 9 for 14 from the free throw line, not outstanding, but obviously good enough. Indiana had a 36-34 rebounding advantage. I think that was 21-12 at halftime. So that, I think, kind of helped Indiana, establish that lead that they got. 40 points in the paint, 35 points off the bench, which obviously is a lot due to Reneau coming off the bench in this one. Miles Rice also came off the bench, had 10 points, 4 for 8 from the field, made 2 threes. I sort of think that's also been a byproduct of Indiana putting the ball in Trey Galloway's hands more as sort of an assist man, is that Rice has been able and accepting to play off the ball a little bit more. And, I think he's probably equal or better of a 3-point shooter than Trey Galloway. Galloway's been kind of hard to figure out in that respect because he's been very up and down throughout his career. He went 4 for 5 from three against Penn State and then 0 for 5 today. Kind of speaks to that. But, Rice went 2 for 3 from three. Really just a complete game for Indiana, I thought. Kanan Carlisle came off the bench, scored 2 free throws. Zoom Diallo is really the big player for Washington today, 18 points, 7 for 13 from three. I thought he was pretty impressive as a freshman, though it wasn't enough to keep Washington competitive in this one. We spoke to Mike Woodson and Luke Goody after the game, and I sort of just think kind of the vibe around this team, Luke Goody said it over and over, is urgency. It's March 1st. This is March. Everyone loves to say that. March Madness coming up here soon. Indiana is right on the bubble and needs wins. And, this team, whether it's guys like Trey Galloway, Anthony Leal, Umar Ballo, this is it for them. And I think that sense of urgency has really gotten this team to play some of its best basketball of late. They've won 4 out of the last 5, two of their best wins of the season, or definitely their 2 best wins of the season at Michigan State and at home against Purdue during that stretch. So I think this is a team that is playing almost like it's sort of the NCAA tournament already in terms of like sort of win or go home type of mentality. Like this, a loss today would have been really detrimental to their tournament hopes. So if you kind of look at it in that way, it's like it's all almost like postseason play in a certain way. Obviously, if they're lost, they're still playing, but kind of to that effect of, hey, it's now or never for this team. And I also wonder just if, the news from about a month ago at this point about Woodson stepping down after the season, if that's also kind of added to that sentiment of like, hey, we know a lot of things are changing after the season. A lot of guys are gone. The coach is gone. So let's make the most of it and let's play hard and let's try to sneak into the tournament and see what we can do. I kind of think that's the vibe around this team at this point. And obviously it worked well today. Things get much more difficult Tuesday at Oregon. Oregon had won earlier in the week at Wisconsin, came back and won that game. I think they played today. Haven't seen that final score, but with this one, Indiana improves to 18-11 overall, 9-9 in Big Ten play. They travel to to Oregon. Looks like Oregon today just won 82-61. So they're coming off a big win, probably feeling good about themselves. Had won at Wisconsin earlier in the week. That one tips at 6 p.m. Pacific time, 9 p.m. Eastern, Tuesday at Matthew Knight Arena in Eugene. I'm making the drive over there tomorrow and then heading back to Bloomington for senior day against Ohio State next Saturday. But, this is an Indiana team that for everything that went wrong earlier in the season, had lost 8 of their last 10 games. Mike Woodson made a point to mention a few times when we were talking to him after today's game, like, hey, a lot of those games we played well enough to win and just didn't close it. And he's like, we wouldn't even be having this conversation, had we pulled out some of those games. And he took ownership, saying, like, it's on me, and I'm taking it that we didn't do that. But I think that sort of just speaks to the confidence that he has in this team, that he knows he had talent. He said going into the year it was his most talented team, and I kind of think that maybe this is a little bit of how he envisioned that they could play, when they were playing at their best. Obviously still going to be difficult. Looks like they've been playing these videos on the video board at Alaska Airlines Arena. So we'll wrap this one up. Hopefully you guys can still hear me, but I don't want to film another one of these. So we'll wrap it up there. I've been Jack Ankony with our Indiana on Hoosiers SI post-game reaction video, and I'll talk to you Tuesday after Indiana's game against Oregon in Eugene. See you then.